Last Monday, the 19th of July 2010, I had the great good fortune of being able to interview Professor Bruce Lipton, PhD, regarding homeopathy and energy medicine in general, but very specifically homeopathy, because that is at the moment on the concerted attack right around the planet from the pharmaceutical cartel, who are trying to have it banned in many countries because it is unscientific. Now, I specifically asked Professor Lipton to comment upon this claim and to explain to us what the reality is from his point of view as one of the world's leading cell biologists. The following video is his response. Now, in this video he explained to us exactly how homeopathy functions, and even more pertinent, why pharmaceutical medicine does not. So I hope you enjoy the video. I must apologise in the beginning for the rather poor quality. The battery in my video camera died just as we wanted to start the interview, and so we improvised by using the webcam built into Bruce's laptop. So it worked.
Go.
So, Professor Lipton, we heard you at the weekend telling us about the informational causation of, shall we say, of perhaps the majority of the maladies known to mankind. Does it seem appropriate to you that a method of healing which is based upon information is more likely to be effective than one which is based upon chemistry?
Oh, it is absolutely important to understand that a very small percent of illness on this planet is actually due to organic causes, especially genetics. As a matter of fact, around 2% of diseases in this world today can be directly attributed to genetics. The rest of diseases are relationship to the environment and genetics. The significance of the environment is that the information that we pick up, and it's information about the environment that we pick up through our senses, this information is the information that is used to actually not just adjust our own biology and behavior, but this information from the environment even adjusts our genetics, so that every day as we respond to environmental cues, not only are we adjusting behavior, but we are also influencing the readout of all our genes, so that the concept that we are like made out of genetic concrete and that determines our lives gives way to a reality that the genes are essentially plastic. The readout of the genes can vary day by day based on our personal life experiences and the information that we receive from the environment, so much to the extent that one gene blueprint can be modified to create 30,000 different variations of proteins from the same gene, and all these variations are dependent upon an individual's response to the environment. So rather than emphasizing organic nature of disease, it turns out diseases are most related to how we interpret or perceive or respond to environmental cues, which by definition is information.
So then an informationally based medicine could be effective, such as homeopathy.
All kinds of information-based medicines are very effective, starting from just psychology alone. I mean, when you start to understand the nature of a placebo effect is just based on a person's perception or belief, and a minimum of 1/3 of all healings from the medical profession, be they drugs or surgery, 1/3 is all just due to the perceptions and beliefs and attitudes of the patient. So anything that will actually influence a person's perception or response to the environment becomes a primal input into the nature of our health and disease.
So what exactly does homeopathy do in this sense?
Well, it's interesting because homeopathy is, by conventional standards, kind of weird, but by the understanding of quantum mechanics becomes very based in hard science, and that is water molecules in solution communicate with each other via what are called hydrogen bonds. And hydrogen bonds are charges of vibration of loose bonding between individual water molecules based on their polarity. what's very interesting is science has found out that when hydrogen bonds are formed between water molecules, the bonds also act as conduits for vibrational information. So water molecules can pass information from one water molecule to another water molecule to another water molecule. So whatever is influencing a water molecule can ultimately be spread in a solution of water via hydrogen bond communication between the molecules of water, so that information is transferred. So if I put some information into water in a short period of time, the information will transfer from one water molecule to another via the hydrogen bonds. And then you might say, well, what about the initiating piece of information like a chemical? Well, if you remove that chemical, but you still have the vibration in the field, the water molecules will apparently maintain the continued vibration, so that you can have the information transferred even without the chemistry anymore. And basically this is where the memory of water is applied and understood as a molecular connection between the information in the field and the hydrogen bonding of the molecules.
So the human body being at least 70% water, the information in water should have a very significant effect upon the human body.
Oh, absolutely. All the chemistry in water is the equivalent of creating homeopathy. I mean, it's just as much as I put a chemical in a beaker of water, or I secrete a chemical from my brain into the blood, which is essentially the base is all water. There would be no difference in those two except for the location. So basically, the water in the body would also carry information. And this is a real interesting new insight, because this actually was understood a long time ago. There was a Nobel Prize winner by the name of Albert St. Georgi, who actually won, I think, 2 Nobel Prizes. One of them was on the molecular nature of muscle contraction, the interaction of molecules. And it was interesting. I think it was in 1959. He wrote a book, I think it was called The Introduction to Subcellular Biology, and introduced the concept of quantum mechanics as a fundamental element in understanding the nature of a human body. And it was very interesting, because back in those days, even though he won a Nobel Prize, all of his conventional peers thought he was kind of crazy and losing it. He was, St. George was going a little senile, introducing the nature of the quantum mechanics. And had he lived long enough and had his peers lived long enough since 59, they would recognize today that the new understanding in biochemistry today is that when you talk about like proteins, which are the fundamental units of the body, and proteins interacting, they interact via an entanglement with quantum fields through what we call constructive and destructive interference patterns, which control their behavior. The relevance about that is proteins interact to energy fields more than they interact to chemical fields. So quantum biophysics will be the actual future of new medicine and new biology.
So, if I follow this correctly, when Hahnemann said that it's the information of the healing substance which is paramount, and it is the chemical substance which has almost no relevancy, he was speaking nothing other than objective fact.
At that point, I mean, it wasn't known, it was fact at that time, but now this is becoming much more understood in factual world. There's was a researcher by the name of McClare at Oxford or Cambridge, can't remember, but obviously one of the 2 serious universities in England. And what he identified was he was looking at the control of the spread of information, signaling. And his question was, if cells can respond to both chemical signals and they can respond to energetic signals, would there be a difference in the response? And here's what he found. When he did the assessment, he found that signaling with energy vibration is an order of magnitude greater in ability of sending information than trying to send information via chemicals. He talked very simply about the fact that when you use chemicals as a signaling device, that when a chemical binds to another chemical, there's something called the heat of reaction. And in the heat of reaction, you give off the heat from a chemical interaction. But the significance is this: heat is disorganized, dissipated energy. So it says that if a molecule is carrying information, about 98% of the available energy for information is actually dissipated as heat during a chemical reaction, so that when you use a molecule to send information, you're approximately getting about 1% of the information in the transfer, and about 98 to 99% of the information lost as heat. In contrast, he said, when you use energetic signaling, vibrational signaling, that you essentially get 100% of the signal in transfer because there's no energy lost in the chemical reaction. So he showed that, well, actually 2 orders of magnitude more effective using vibrational energy as a communication rather than chemistry.
So you're saying that modern science now says that it's the information which counts, and the chemical substance is not only irrelevant, it's a hindrance. So science is saying that homeopathy is the thing, and science is saying that pharmaceutical medicine is unscientific.
Well, very much about the pharmaceutical medicine, which turns out to be actually kind of lethal and is one of the primary causes of death in what we call iatrogenic illness. So in fact, for example, in the United States alone, 300,000 or more people die every year from pharmaceutical chemistry, which is vastly more people die from so-called illegal drugs. The legal drugs are actually more lethal. There's an interesting article that was published in the Journal of Nature regarding the mechanism by which information influences the movement of molecules, and why that's as important is because life is derived from the movement of molecules. So in the paper was studying what is the mechanics that result in the movement of molecules, which result in the expression of life. And the understanding was they first tried to assess the movements of molecules using the mechanisms of Newtonian physics, and they were completely unable to predict the movements of the molecules. As soon as they applied the quantum mechanical principles to the movement of molecules, they were able to accurately predict the movement of molecules, which then really emphasizes this, that our conventional medicine, which is really based on a Newtonian physics and Newtonian chemistry, is incorrectly perceiving how molecules move in the mechanics of life, and that the new physics is really the foundation of molecular movements. And what's very interesting about this is that there was a review article of this paper by the two authors are Prof and Goodman. These were the ones that were looking at the mechanisms of molecular movement, but there was an editorial in the same issue of Nature that said, well, what is the meaning of this work by Prof and Goodman? And I loved it because it says, right there in the subtitle of the article, it says, if you want to understand the nature of molecule movement, it says, don't look for the answers in your organic chemistry textbook. And the complete important meaning of that message is this: organic chemistry is used to define the principles of medicine. Medicine is built on organic chemistry. And yet what Weinhold's article was talking about, it says, when you understand the new mechanisms that cause molecules to move, you'll realize that those mechanisms are not described in conventional organic chemistry because they're really quantum biophysics. And so he was saying, well, if you want to understand how life works, that's essentially what he means by if you understand how molecules move. He said, you will not find the answers in organic chemistry, and organic chemistry is the foundation of allopathic medicine. So basically it says allopathic medicine's perception is totally skewed and flawed because it does not incorporate the role of quantum entanglement, and quantum entanglement are the roles of vibrational energies in what are called constructive and destructive interference patterns. So it's like harmony and resonance is really the primary mechanism of molecular movement, not positive and negative charges or regional charges, which are like Newtonian mechanisms.
So finally, Professor Lipton, as a former teacher of medicine in major universities, if you had a health problem and you were faced with the choice between a doctor who practices pharmaceutical medicine, and a doctor who practices homeopathy, which one would you choose?
Very simple answer for me at this moment. I don't go to medical doctors. I haven't been to a medical doctor in about 15 years, and I knew exactly what I was going for then because I wanted some penicillin because I had pneumonia, and I knew what I needed, some penicillin, but I had to see a doctor to get the prescription for it. But the idea about it is this: I stay away from them as much as possible, but I don't want to say that medicine's bad. I really want to tell you that medicine has an important function. Medicine does miracles in its field. And I said, well, then what is it that you would go to medicine for? And the answer for me is trauma. If I break something, I need something sewn up, I need a part replaced, you can bet your life I'm going to go to a medical doctor before I go to a homeopath. But when it comes to issues that medicine really just plays with, in the sense that, well, what about diabetes, Alzheimer's, multiple sclerosis, cancer, obesity? These kinds of issues, these are not trauma-related issues. And as a result of that, medicine doesn't have a very good track record with it because medicine is coming from a wrong scientific foundation. Medicine, again, being founded in the mechanisms of Newtonian mechanics, is really not totally understanding the nature of life, because the nature of life is based on quantum physics. And the difference between us, of course, is Newtonian mechanics emphasizes materialism, matter, physical chemistry, and quantum physics says, no, it's the invisible forces, it's the energy and the vibration which are profoundly important. And so from the work of McClare, as I mentioned, or from the work of Pofristic and Goodman, and even Albert Szent-Györgyi, it says that the new direction of medicine will be energy medicine. But again, this doesn't mean that if I get in a car accident and my guts are hanging out, that I will certainly try to find a homeopath to help me. That wouldn't work for me. So use the medicine for what it's really good for, but then consider other alternatives when it comes to issues of health that are outside the nature of trauma. So, for example, cancer. What is cancer caused by? Well, now we're recognizing the primary cause of cancer is perception. That genetics account for far less of cancer than 10%. And so the relevance is 90% of cancer actually cannot be attributed to the physical mechanical body, but it is attributed to the information or the perception of the individual in response to their environment, and that perception being translated into biology. So the healing issues in our world are mostly not approached by conventional medicine. Conventional medicine would recognize, for example, that 90% of cardiovascular disease, which is one of the leading killers in the world, has nothing to do with organic causes. 90% of cardiovascular disease is a person's personal perception or stresses or environmental lifestyle actions. And why I bring that up is because if you have cardiovascular disease and you end up going to conventional allopaths, the first thing they're going to probably do is try to assign a pharmaceutical drug, when in fact is the first thing they would have done in real health is to give really a foundation, education, and insight into the reality that cardiovascular disease is changeable just by how you change your perceptions and responses to life, not how you change your physical body.
Last week in the German magazine the Spiegel, there was a very large article explaining why homeopathy should be banned because it is unscientific. Would you like to comment upon this? Yeah,
well, I basically would like to just say that on a real definition basis, allopathic medicine is pretty much unscientific because allopathic medicine is manipulated, controlled by the pharmaceutical industry, which sells chemistry. Now, you say, well, why is that important? Well, let me just bring up a simple point. If I asked the audience, I said, are you aware that there are much more effective ways to produce energy on this planet besides burning fossil fuels, much more efficient and much more effective? And the answer is, most people I hope would recognize, yes, there are many different ways to produce energy besides fossil fuels. And then I ask the question, where are they? And the reason why I ask that question is, they're not here. And then you would say, but if we know they exist, then why aren't we using them? And the answer is, it's not in the interest of an industry, the fossil fuel industry, to offer energy that doesn't use fossil fuel, because that's the whole business program. And then I say, okay, what does that mean about medicine? I go, well, are there other ways to heal yourself besides medicine? And the answer is, oh, most certainly there are. And most of it involves energy. All these different forms of alternative or complementary medicine are really based on energy at the fundamental level. I say, well, if that's really true, then where are these energy modalities in our world today? And the answer is, it's not in the interest of a pharmaceutical industry that sells chemicals to offer insights into other forms of healing that don't use chemicals. Why? It's not in the business plan. And in fact, having been a researcher and a professor in a medical school for a number of years and having received my grants and all the things I had to do, I can tell you this, is that my work was funded because when I wrote my grants, I appealed to the pharmaceutical industry's perception of chemicals and molecules involved in healing, and yet when I had an opportunity to do my work, it really revolved that the understanding about health was really information in the fields. And so basically what did I know and what did I learn is that medical research is directed and controlled by the influences of the pharmaceutical industry. It's not directed and influenced by the interests of the public. And why is that important? Because medicine, in allopathic medicine, I'll give you a fact of, right now it's a fact of data, that in the United States today, allopathic medicine is the leading cause of death, and it's called iatrogenic illness. And the relevance about that is very simple. If a healing modality is the leading cause of death, then you have to ask a logical question. The logical question is, if you really know how life works and you're trying to heal with your science, then how come allopathic medicine is the leading cause of death? And the answer is because something very profound is missing from their awareness. And what's missing is the nature of the role of energy and mind and field in understanding the nature of life. And that is the foundation of quantum physics. And then if you just bottom line say, well, how come I claim that conventional modern medicine is not scientific? And the answer is simply this. Science is built on a hierarchy of fundamental sciences built one on top of each other. The bottom science that is the foundation of all sciences today is called mathematics. And then from mathematics you create physics, which is the science of mechanisms, how things work. And then from physics, you create chemistry. And so you understand physics, then you can understand the nature of chemistry. And there are all different kinds of chemistry, and near the top of the chemistry pile is something called biochemistry. And the relevance about that is that leads to biology, which then leads to psychology. So in a hierarchy of sciences, physics is down much lower than biology and psychology. And you say, well, why is that important? And the answer is very simply this. When a science on a lower tier changes its belief system, it is incumbent that every science built above and built on that foundation must incorporate those new insights into their science. So then I say, well, what's wrong then with conventional allopathic medicine? The answer is it's based on Newtonian physics. And Newtonian physics has been modified, updated, and really changed by the concepts of quantum mechanics, which came in 1925. Well, chemistry has now incorporated quantum mechanical mechanisms in its understanding of the new fields of chemistry, where you can direct chemical reactions by vibrational frequencies. Biology, and especially because of its manipulation by the pharmaceutical industry, has retained its Newtonian base in the presence of a quantum mechanical world. And why is that relevant? It's like, then it just means then science in the form of biomedicine is no longer scientific, because until it incorporates the principles of quantum mechanics, which are the fundamental mechanisms of the universe, until that time, then conventional biology is operating from a misperception of a Newtonian universe, something that has been now proven to be totally false. So until this change occurs, conventional science, especially as it's run by the drug company, with its primary interest in the material mechanisms of Newton, until the new physics comes in, conventional biomedicine is by definition outdated.
Thank you very, very much for that very rapid.
Well, karma. We got to get as much information out to the public as fast as we can, because we're really running into a crisis in the world. When you recognize, for example, that healthcare crises are undermining most of the major countries and civilizations around the world because of the high costs and less effectiveness of this approach to health, it's time to introduce a new understanding of health, and especially one based on energy medicine, because when you start to recognize that it's energy, then you say, well, how much does energy cost? And the answer is, well, it doesn't really cost anything.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Karma.